Welcome to It's Your Ego, Stupid, a show lovingly intended for millions of spiritual, intelligent, and imperfect people like you who may at times be led into ego stupidity, a lesser version of yourself and a lesser version of life. This show will give you a much deeper understanding of what ego is, what it's doing to your life, how it can weaken your human and spiritual wellness, and how you can heal in each of these areas if needed. It's Your Ego, Stupid will heighten your awareness of the intense link between your ego and spirit, your humanity and divinity, and the synergy that can lead to the best version of you and your life. Your host is Dr. Nick Martin, a licensed psychologist who has worked in the clinical, university, school, and private practice settings over the past 40 years, while serving as a therapist, diagnostician, educator, and consultant. Welcome again to It's Your Ego, Stupid. And now your host, Dr. Nick Martin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Nick Martin, and thank you for listening to It's Your Ego, Stupid. As the intro said, this is a program lovingly intended for spiritual, intelligent, and imperfect people, just like you and me, who may at times be led by our ego into something I call ego stupidity, a lesser version of ourselves, and a lesser version of life. Ego stupidity that can be affecting the relationship we have with our husband, wife, or partner. Perhaps it's happening with our son or daughter, or maybe our brother or sister, and even with ourselves. Ego stupidity that can make it difficult for us to achieve, to make use of our potential, to climb the ladder of success, and to experience a sense of purpose and meaning to our life. Ego stupidity that can make it difficult to effectively deal with all of the inevitable changes, adversity, stressors, or conflicts that happen in all of our lives. And finally, ego stupidity that makes it difficult to feel genuine happiness and can often lead us into unneeded or inappropriate anxiety, anger, guilt, sadness, or something I call fake happiness, which is actually pleasure-based happiness masquerading for the real thing. If things aren't going well, or perhaps as well as you'd like, you've come to the right place, because a lot of what's going wrong in our lives, or perhaps not as well as we want them to go, has a lot to do with our ego energy, which is serving as the fuel for ego stupidity. It's often the unseen and the unrecognized source of what's going wrong in our life, both humanly and spiritually. These are lessons that I've learned from thousands of people just like you over the past 40 years. You are the ones who have taught me with your lives, your relationships, and your experiences what theorists, books, or schools of psychology could not teach me about ego. You have been my teachers. Again, thank you for joining me for today's program, which is going to have us looking at important areas of our life and why they are important, and where the reflections of ego stupidity can be seen. The first three of them, loving ourselves and forming close relationships with loved ones, as well as participating in healthy social interactions at work, or maybe it's at play or within other social settings. I wasn't able to get to them last week because we're going to be doing that during today's program. So I'm sorry about that. But before we do that, we're going to begin by asking, what are these important life areas? What are these challenges that we all have to face? Imagine that after you were born, and you began to meet life in the outside world over the course of your early life, and you were given a list of challenges that would end up determining the quality of your life, what your life was going to amount to. Well, I'm going to share with you the ones that others have shared with me in my work, the important or key or significant challenges that we are all asked to manage over the course of our life and hopefully make it a healthy one, a good one, an enriching one. And by the way, I want to mention that these challenges meeting the challenges are not a given. just because we are presented with the challenge, it doesn't mean we're going to necessarily meet it successfully. And that's unfortunately what seems to happen in the lives of so many people. And why that happens is that our ego energy can often get in the way of meeting the challenges. And I'll be sharing more about what that looks like as we go along. But I want to mention the task list of challenges that are to be met. And the very first one on that list, and probably one of the most important ones in the whole list because of the ripple effect it has on all the other ones, is our ability to love ourselves. Our ability to love ourselves. So many times you might think, well, isn't that going to be a relatively easy one to come to know or like ourselves? Unfortunately, in my work, I found this is a much more difficult challenge for us to meet. There are lots of obstacles that may get in the way, and in particular, when our ego energy is unhealthy, it often prevents us from being able to do that. Earlier this week, I happened to be watching a movie. It was on Elton John. It was called Rocket Man, a very good movie. But it illustrated or depicted just this issue at work in the life of a very famous and talented person. In the earlier parts of the movie, they demonstrated or depicted again the issues that his parents, his mom and dad, who were quite dysfunctional in the way they interacted with him. And two of the things they had difficulty with were telling him that he was worthy of being loved and how to love himself. So they both were failing him tremendously in his earlier life on whether he was able to be loved and also how to go about loving himself. And as the story unfolded and they depicted later parts of his life in his adolescence and young adulthood, they demonstrated how, as a result of that, failing to meet that particular challenge, it led to other issues in an effort to compensate, those connected to drugs and alcohol. Fortunately, as they went further into this movie, they showed you how he started to begin to be able to love himself and know that he was worthy of love, as well as how to go about doing that. And fortunately, he's been sober for the last 28 years. All the drug and alcohol addiction has been addressed. But the source and the origins of that began with this issue in loving ourselves and him loving himself. And this is not an issue that is a small-time issue. This is an issue that I would dare say happens for hundreds of millions of people, this difficulty with liking and loving ourselves. And we're going to be talking more about that later today, but I just wanted to mention that this is the first item on your task list. So you might ask yourself, how am I doing in that area? The next item on that task list would be our ability to form close relationships with loved ones. Forming close relationships with our loved ones, particularly with our husband or wife or partner, or perhaps with our son or daughter, or with our brother or sister. We see lots of difficulty, lots of issues. Again, it's not a given that good things are going to happen within those relationships. So many people have shared with me this particular challenge and how all the things that we can experience out of life with those individuals are lost because of our inability to work on and work within these relationships and how to communicate and how to experience a sense of compassion for ourselves and them, how we can work in compromising effectively, and how we can work to create in the relationship. That all of these, I call them tools, that we work with and we cultivate within those close relationships are not able to be done well and undermine our meeting of this particular challenge. So that's a pretty important challenge on the task list. And then we go on to the next item on that list, that task list of life for people to meet, which has to do with our ability to participate in healthy or productive interactions with people beyond our immediate familial context. Those may be ones that take place at work, the ones we have with our coworkers, or the ones that happen when we are at play and enjoying recreational experiences, or other social settings. These are all important experiences, and because we don't live our life in a vacuum, but because it contains lots and lots of people in it, it provides us with this opportunity to grow and to learn from each other and to become a more mature person. So many people are wrestling with that, people who become distant or alienated from people because they're concerned about the difficulty they may have in receiving their acceptance and so on. Oftentimes concerns that really are ill-placed because most people are not out to think of them negatively or judge them or whatever. So that's an important challenge that we are asked to meet. Another challenge, the next one, is your ability to use your potentials, the talents that you were born with, to achieve and progress through your life as you move forward, and to ultimately be able to experience a sense of purpose and meaning to your life. Unfortunately, many people are having difficulty with their ability to achieve. Some of them are underachieving. They're failing to make use of their talents because of a fear of failure, as well as a fear of success. And some others are dealing with issues in which they are overemphasizing achievement as a means to affirming themselves in some way to experience a greater sense of love for themselves that, again, is often ill-placed. So that sense, and as a result, this difficulty ultimately creates lots of dissatisfaction in one's life with what they're doing in their life, how far they're going in their life, and perhaps never getting to the sense of meaning and purpose that we should all be able to experience and we were meant to experience in our life. The next challenge, the next item on the task list is your ability to grow the quality of your mind with truth. Your ability to grow the quality of your mind with truth. And what that means is our minds can be filled with things that are reality connected, truth connected things that we can work with to put them in there. And this is an outgrowth of our ability to experience a thirst for what we don't know, as well as the ability to be skeptical of what we do know. Those two parts of this are a challenge because a lot of times people simply sit back and they accept readily the things they're being told or the things they want to believe. There's really one important thing that I want to mention connected to this has to do with your brain. Your brain is the part of you that is learning things and downloading things from outside of it that you will use in your life. And hopefully you're populating it with reality-based and truth-connected stuff. But your brain, as miraculous as a tool as it is, has one major flaw. It cannot distinguish between truth and belief. It cannot distinguish between fact and fiction. It's something that we have to be willing to do. The question is, will you do that? A lot of times when people are not able to do that or not wanting to do that, using an example of the coronavirus, they are willing to accept things as truth which aren't truth, things that could get them into trouble from a health standpoint or others into trouble from a health standpoint. Things like, I can't get this, I can't spread this, I'm not a carrier of this. It's not something that I, as a younger person, will be able to experience. All of these things and more are like fake news. The idea of it's a hoax. Those are all faulty ideas and they're faulty beliefs. And the sooner we can see them for what they truly are, at a distance from truth and reality, the sooner that we get on with doing the right things like social distancing and to maintain diligent hygienic care so that we don't transmit the virus from ourselves to others if we have to make contact with it. So our ability to grow our mind, the quality of our mind, is our job. It's our challenge to meet if we choose to meet it. The next challenge, the sixth one on the list, is your ability to work with the inevitable changes of a developmental, situational, societal, and technological nature that life is going to bring to your door. We're all going to confront these changes. We're not immune from those changes occurring within our life. And we can either ignore them or resist them, deny that they're happening, or we can work with them to optimize our response to them within our life. We also have to face the challenge of dealing with the failures and the losses and the mistakes that are coming our way, that we will get into, that we will make, because they are rooted in our imperfection. We are imperfect as human beings, and we must take ownership of that rather than blaming others for our mistakes or other things for our mistakes. Sometimes we are the source of those errors, those losses, those mistakes, and we must be able to do that. Unfortunately, some people don't meet this challenge very well. They get consumed with blaming others, and a lot of times it's the ego energy that's happening that's getting in the way. We're going to be coming up on our first break. When we return, I'm going to continue talking about this task list and how we need to work on recognizing this list and what we can do about working towards managing them more effectively. This is Dr.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Did you know that you have the power to change anything in your life? Did you know you can do so even with the things that you've already decided are impossible to change? Come join me, Venus Castleberg, on Outside the Impossible as I interview people from around the globe that have literally changed the things they thought were impossible to change just by using the amazing tools of Access Consciousness. Now airing Wednesdays 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Do you dare to believe that anything really is possible?
Hi, Dr. Nick Martin here. I want to invite you to visit my website, egoandspirit.info, where you can find lots of information on ego and download your free ebook copy of It's Your Ego Stupid. Fix it to fix your life. Also, please visit the shop page where you can find each of my other books, Ego Therapy, Ego Spiritualism, and The Two Voices Within.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Nick, and you're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid, a program for intelligent, spiritual, and imperfect people, just like you and me. Before the break, we were talking about the 10 life challenges I guess I'd call it a task list of life that we are all asked to meet. Every one of us is required or being asked to meet by life when we enter into it to address these challenges in an effort to have a good life and even a great life. And failing to handle these challenges, something that often comes as a result of our ego energy, if it's imbalanced, we're often living a lesser version of life. For some people, it's a poor quality of life, or maybe it's just a fair quality of life. I'll be saying a little more about that later. We are now going to talk a little bit more about those last three challenges on the list of our task list. And the next one is the ability to manage the various stressors that life is going to bring to your door. Life is going to bring stressors of a financial nature. It's going to bring stressors of a familial nature, ones of a work-related nature, and even health-related nature. We don't escape any of that. We are all being challenged to handle the stressors that life will bring to us. Some of them are smaller, and some of them are larger. Some start out small, but become larger as a result of our failure to manage them in the earlier stages. But we all get confronted by these stressors. They are one of those challenges. Sometimes people have said to me, well, they feel like they're getting more stressors than other people are in their life. When in actuality, what's really happening is they're not managing them very well. And their failure to manage them is a function of their ego energy getting in the way of them being able to respond in a more optimal way. That'll be something I'll be talking about a little bit later. The next item on the task list, the ninth one, is your ability to resolve conflict. Your ability to resolve conflict. These are conflicts that you have with various people in your life. These are inevitable because each of us has an individuality. We are a distinctly different entity or being from any other human being who has ever lived. We all come from a distinctly different time, place, set of experiences, relationships, life events that make it impossible for any other human being to ever be exactly like us. And what that often contributes to is the potential for conflict. And many times the resolution of conflict can be done well by some. They learn how to agree to disagree. They can speak respectfully to those with whom they are in conflict, and the conflict is over. It's done. Unfortunately, that is not the challenge. The result of the challenge or the resolution of this challenge, the meeting of this challenge that does occur. All too often we see people who get involved in toxic, destructive, harmful, never-ending conflict. And obviously that's going to undermine the quality of their life. So we'll be talking about that and how our ego energy can insert itself into the way we go about handling conflict. The last item on the task list, your ability to experience genuine happiness. Genuine happiness. This seems to be such a difficult challenge for many people to meet because of all the things that are going on in their lives. And oftentimes their happiness or lack of happiness and their detouring into anxiety and fear or anger and hatred or guilt or something I call fake happiness comes about as a result of those other important life areas, those other challenges that have not been successfully met. So there's a linkage in our happiness to the amount of how well we have dealt with these other challenges. In some ways, they're kind of connected together on that list. But this is the very last one, and we'll be talking about this along the course of our programs. I want to refer to those challenges as sort of like chapters of our life story. Our life story. And each one in and of itself is an important chapter of your life. And what happens with each of those chapters is that you are writing in the details. You are writing in the details with your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors that you fill up the pages of each chapter with. And hopefully you're filling those pages with lots of good things, showing how you are meeting those challenges effectively. Or unfortunately for some, the chapters and the pages are being filled with other things, less healthy or unhealthy thoughts, feelings, and behaviors pertaining to the chapter that they are working in. I mentioned earlier that these are in some ways make or break areas of impacting the overall quality of our life. In my book, It's Your Ego Stupid, I talk about poor, fair, good, and great. And for those who are living in a poor quality of life, there's often a lot of things not going well in many of those chapters. And there's an intense sense of emptiness and darkness connected to their life story. Now, it doesn't have to remain that way. We can work on the issues involving our ego energy that are feeding into our ego mind and our ego self that we bring to the chapters, to these different chapters, and change that. Now, there are some people who are living what I call a fair quality of life. These are often people who would tell you that it is what it is. And that when they think about their life in life, there's a sense of resignation that it is going to be as good as it's going to be, and they don't have a lot of feeling of being able to control that, to make any real difference. It's as if they are settling for less rather than more of what life has to offer. And part of that is because they don't know there is more to life. They're kind of locked into this idea that, oh, it's just going to be what it is. And that's quite unfortunate. The next level can be those who are experiencing good, what they would describe as a good life. These are people who are doing pretty good at meeting many of those challenges. But there are actually two versions of good. There is the genuine good, and there is the fake good. The genuine good, as I mentioned earlier, are people who are doing a good job of liking and loving themselves, of being able to interact with close loved ones, of being able to work with people on the outside of their homes and their families, and doing all those other challenges in a pretty good way. So that they're in a good place. And I was going to say a little more later, but before I do, I'm going to talk about the fake good. The fake good people are the ones who they're getting a lot of the things out of life that they can enjoy and pleasure. They may be making lots of money, and they've got lots of cars and homes and other things, status in their life. Sometimes this is coming at the expense of others that they are taking advantage of, and they have been able to defeat along their path to whatever they have gotten in their life. Again, all the toys, a lot of consumption with materialism, things like that. But back to the good people, the people who are not good people, but the good quality of life. Sometimes as we're going through our lives and we get to that place where things are going well, there's still a sense of not fully experiencing what life has to offer. There's the sense of there's something missing. And that is something that oftentimes I've seen in people who are looking back, doing what I call a midlife review. This is something for people in their 40s or 50s. And maybe they're saying, is that all there is? Yeah, I've been really successful in my life, but isn't there something more? And I think this is where the time when people begin to go inward and they begin to make the search having to do with things on a spiritual level, and beginning to see where they're at on a spiritual, what their spiritual consciousness is, what their spiritual development looks like. And these are the people, I think, who can have the potential and then ultimately may enter into the great life when they are awakening on a fully spiritual basis to the love and the life and the energy that God is within them and that they bring into the world, as well as the ability to fully embrace the great gifts of their life, meaning their life and their ability to create the life in which they're living, and the ability to know that they have an eternal life, and to also know that God is completely within their being. This is when the good life becomes the great life. So that's what's taking place when people are in those different levels of quality, again, often affected by whether ego is getting in the way or is not getting in the way. These challenges are life mirrors for you to look into. But when you look into them, you have to know what to look for. And in that respect, I'm going to be serving as your guide for how to look into these mirrors, because a lot of times people can be looking at something, but they don't really know what they're looking at or what to see. So we can be looking at something, but not seeing what is really there. And so sometimes it needs to be magnified, or it needs to be highlighted for you to draw your attention to that, and to help you get the real data about your life, the real data about what's really happening in those 10 key life areas, those important life areas, those life challenges. And in some respects, I'm going to be serving as your ego microscope. Your ego microscope. And what I'll be doing is to aim this ego microscope at these different important life areas to help you see more of what maybe not be being seen. So we're going to get started now talking about our ability to love ourselves, the one that we began talking about on the task list, our ability to love ourselves. And the question you might have, and I'm going to answer with all of these areas, is why is this an important life area? What have I learned from you guys about this life area, and why is it important? Why is this challenge important? Well, I'm going to begin by saying that people have taught me that this is the most important relationship they will ever have in their life. It's the most important relationship that you will have in your life, is the relationship you have with you. It's the relationship upon which the quality of all of the other relationships is built, for better or worse. The relationship you have with yourself is going to have a profound effect on all of the other relationships with you, other people, and other in your life. It's hard to have a good relationship, a good, healthy relationship with yourself, and a bad or unhealthy relationship with others. They don't go together. And also, it's hard to have a bad relationship with yourself, a poor relationship with yourself, and a good relationship with others. So just the opposite of them, good goes with good relationships with others, bad goes with bad relationships with others. So the relationship you have with yourself, it's going to shape the healthy or unhealthy thoughts and the feelings and the behaviors that we will bring into our relationships with our family members. Again, your husband or your wife, your son or partner, your son or daughter, your brother or sister. It's going to affect what you bring into the relationships with friends and with coworkers or teachers. And it even affects the relationship you have with God. The relationship you have with God is affected by the relationship you have with yourself. So this ability to love and accept ourselves as we grow to be a better person often draws people toward us. When you are in a good place, when you like and you love yourself in a healthy way, you can bring that brings people toward us. It's sort of like a powerful magnetic force at work, making people welcome opportunities to connect with us. It draws other people toward us. On the other side, when people don't love and they don't accept themselves, people often pick up on that negative energy. They can feel it intuitively if it's not completely an intellectual experience. And people are often looking for love and offering love to other people in ways that are unhealthy and misguided, even if they are well-intended. So when you aren't liking and loving yourself, this opens the door to looking for love outside of yourself and offering love to others outside of yourself in ways that are unhealthy and misguided. Sometimes we are beginning to ask others to fill a void that nobody else can truly fill. So when you don't love yourself, but you want love, you go elsewhere. And you can find your way to the wrong people at the wrong times in the wrong places in order to fill the need to be loved that you're not able to give to yourself. Sometimes people want others to accept them so that they can accept themselves. It's sort of like a substitute. If you can accept me, well, then I can accept me. That doesn't work because that would be conditional. That would be conditional love, conditional acceptance. And genuine love, but from ourselves or from others and toward ourselves, it can only be unconditional for it to be real, for it to actually be real. And when we fail to recognize that, we don't know that unconditional love is the only way to know and experience true love, it can often lead people into a series of dysfunctional or broken relationships, or that can involve manipulation and exploitation and a psychological or physical abuse. This often is the end result of a misguided approach to receiving love through others that people can bring into their life that doesn't work. Or another outcome can be when we don't love ourselves and we've been through these dysfunctional relationships, can be that people start to abandon involvement in relationships. They stop looking for love elsewhere. They stop being able to look toward loving themselves. But they do this distancing thing with other human beings, which isn't going to help. It's going to make things even worse in terms of how they feel about things in life, particularly people. But they do that because there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of frustration they associate with being in relationships. And that results in a lot of detachment and alienation that they get from people. Sometimes some of these people could be really good people that could be very useful to them, but they're very poor at getting to know them, and they just cut all people off for now. When we return, I'm going to be talking about some of the reflections of ego stupidity that often come about as a result of difficulty in being able to love ourselves in healthy ways. You're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid. This is Dr. Nick, and I'll see you after the break.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hi, Dr. Nick here. I want to invite you to visit my website, egoandspirit.info, where you can find lots of information on ego and download your free ebook copy of It's Your Ego Stupid. Fix it to fix your life. Also, please visit the shop page, where you can find focused ego meditations that can help you know whether you are truly speaking with your voice in your life or ego is speaking for you.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything.
I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor.
If making my detox public is going to help somebody, I'm all for it. So I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth. A message from Truth, the Ad Council, and ONDCP.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Nick, and you're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid, a program for intelligent, spiritual, and imperfect people, just like you and me. Before the break, we were talking about the challenge of being able to love ourselves, and I want to now talk about some of the reflections. As I said, these are like mirrors that we can look into, and we have to know what we're looking for in order to see what must be learned about what's happening in order to work toward changing it. So when it comes to loving ourselves, these are some of the things that begin to happen that are reflective of ego stupidity. The first one is that we begin to experience that or think that love for ourselves can only be conditional, that it can only be conditional, that we can only experience love as a result of something that maybe we have to prove something to ourselves or perhaps to someone else. Or we begin to get caught up in thinking that it must be earned, that loving ourselves is something that has to be earned. We have to go do something. Maybe we have to prove, again, I said proving something, but there's a condition placed upon loving ourselves that doesn't belong there. But a lot of times when our ego energy is unhealthy or imbalanced, perhaps it's a problem with empowerment, a disempowerment issue that we might have, or perhaps people are dealing with high ego vulnerability. They're feeling very insecure, and they try to meet their issues regarding insecurity by doing something that proves that they are worthy, that they are significant, that they are really important, something that doesn't have to be proven. But that's something people can get into that's reflective of ego stupidity, rooted in the ego energy that they are living. Another reflection of ego stupidity is when we may have too much self-esteem. Too much self-esteem, when it's high, when it's a situation when we are falling in love with ourselves. Can you hear the narcissist theme coming through here? People who think they're better than other people are. They're more important than other people are. That they needed to be treated better than other people. All of this is sort of a strategy that people who often have higher ego power are engaging in an effort to love themselves. So they have this unhealthily high self-esteem, and that's reflective of ego stupidity. When people treat themselves as they're more important, as it means to affirming that they love themselves, that's not genuinely the case at all. There's lots of issues in that person's ability to love themselves in a healthy way. They are engaging in a way of loving themselves that's unhealthy. On the other side, we can have situations where there is too little self-esteem. People have too little self-esteem. They don't like themselves. They don't love themselves. They can even get to a place where they dislike or even hate themselves. This is the kind of thing that we often see, and I often see in people who are experiencing, again, low ego power energy. They feel disempowered in the way their energy is causing them to feel disempowered. So they may have issues involving worthiness, that they see themselves as less significant, less worthy, less important than other people are, and this affects the way they can go about loving themselves. It's an obstacle that's connected to the ego energy that's blocking them from their ability to love themselves. We can also see ego stupidity happening when people have too much social esteem. Social esteem. This social esteem is when we look at other people and how well we value them. And in the case of this situation, people are they're overvaluing others. They're seeing people as being more than them or better than them, or more worthy than them. They feel less equal to these people, and that's something that's coming as a result of our ego energy. Again, lower ego power or very low ego power energy starts to filter into our thoughts, and it filters into our feelings and our behaviors when it comes to loving ourselves, and we may mistreat ourselves or expect less out of ourselves or less better treatment out of other people because we're less than they are according to what's going on here. And then we can also have too little social esteem. That's another way of displaying ego stupidity. There's too little social esteem. We undervalue others. We think they're less important than us. We see them as being below us. This is something oftentimes when people are dealing with the over-empowerment that comes from higher ego power people. They think that other people are less important than they are, so they treat them as oftentimes objects for their manipulation or their abuse because they deserve to be treated like that. They're not as important as I am. I shouldn't respect them as much as I respect myself. And again, that's this way of going about in loving ourselves by belittling or lowering other people. Insulting other people constantly is a reflection of this ego stupidity at work. So as we move away from this particular challenge, does any of this describe you or perhaps somebody you know? Maybe it's happening some of the time, or maybe it's happening a lot of the time. I will say this, that the more often something is happening over time in different situations, the more you are seeing ego stupidity. These are intelligent people. They are spiritual people. And these are not mentally ill people, but they are having issues in their ego energy. We're going to move to the second challenge, the ability to form close relationships. Why is this an important area? Well, these are the relationships which are the longest and the deepest we're ever going to experience in our life, for better or worse. The relationship with your brother or sister, the ones with your children, those are the ones you're going to know the longest. And there's a distinct body of research to suggest that the quality of these relationships is linked to the amount of happiness that people report experiencing in their life. Our partner, our children, our siblings, these are all opportunities for us to be loved and to be loving. We can lay bare our fears in these relationships. We can share genuine laughter and tears in those relationships. We can express our hopes and dreams within those relationships, and we can receive emotional support within them. So they are really important relationships for us to experience. They are the kind of relationships that allow us to experience or gives us an opportunity to develop and practice communication with each other, to search for compromises. We practice within those relationships the ability to search for compromises that meet each person's wants and needs. When full agreement may not be possible, we are able to experience compassion for the weaknesses and needs of others, as well as learning to be compassionate toward ourselves. And we can learn to work creatively in ways that open the door to new experiences within the relationship. These are all tools that are really important for us to be able to develop, to have healthy, fulfilling, meaningful relationships with people. Now, what starts to happen when people are experiencing difficulties with their ego energy, that fuel, there starts to be ego stupidity that shows its way into these relationships. And these are some examples. For some people, they talk too much and they listen too little. People that spend more of the time talking and dominating rather than listening to their partner or other members of this relationship. A lot of times it's one-way communication. You may often hear when people get divorced or they leave relationships, the primary issue is they wouldn't communicate. Either one of them or both of them were not willing to communicate. They had poor communication skills. Another reflection of ego stupidity for different people is they may talk too little and listen too much. They are too willing to listen to other people, the other person, and willing to not be heard, to be quiet in the relationship, so to speak, so that their ideas and their beliefs and their decisions and their choices aren't representative. And that often happens in these relationships when it should be happening. They should be speaking up. They should be asserting. They should be heard in the relationship. Another reflection of ego stupidity involves a person's unwillingness to compromise. Some people have trouble compromising. They have difficulty seeing their way to the needs of others in the relationship and insist that their way of looking at things and thinking about things is appropriate. When people have higher ego flexibility issues, that's something that often happens. Lower ego flexibility. They're into this very rigid mindset. It's sort of the my way or the highway kind of view of life and how they work with their loved ones, often leading to failing of the relationship, a relationship that cannot grow. People can sometimes be displaying this ego stupidity by compromising too much. They give in too much. They don't draw a line for what they should or should not accept with regard to what's going on. Another reflection of ego stupidity is we want compassion, but we're unwilling to offer it. Some people, particularly those with higher ego power, energy, want compassion, but they can't give it to other people. They want people to recognize their needs. A lot of times there's the narcissist who thinks that it's all about them. It's all about what I want. It's all about what I need. And you're supposed to pay attention to that. And on the other side, I don't really need to do that for you. A reflection of ego stupidity. Sometimes we can reject compassion because we interpret receiving it as a sign of weakness. People that have ego power issues see that if they accept somebody else's compassion, that it ends up leading them in the direction of if they accept it as a reflection that I'm weak, and it makes them, they don't like feeling weak. They feel like if I signal to others that I'm weak, that's not good. And so the ego energy keeps them pushing away compassion. And also they might feel that if they offer compassion to others, these are people with higher ego power, that others will see it as a sign of weakness. So there are lots of issues with regard to what the ego energy can do in our ability to participate in meaningful, healthy relationships with our loved ones that are rooted in the nature of the ego energy that we are, whether it's a power, a flexibility, or a vulnerability issue, that make it difficult to meet this particular life challenge that we all are called upon to meet in order to have healthy and better relationships. We have reached the end of today's program. I hope that what I've shared with you involving ego stupidity and where it can be happening in your life story will serve as a dose of ego medicine. Also, if what I've shared with you during this program resonates with you, please help me to share it with others. Our program next week will continue to focus on these important key life areas, these chapters of our life story, and the challenges that we are going to need to work on meeting in order to live the good life and the great life that we are all meant to live. We're going to be continuing by looking at how we can participate in healthy social interactions, be they with coworkers or with people that we meet in other public settings in the work or play context. We'll also be talking about how we can go about achieving to experience our life's potential and to grow our minds. We'll be talking about that too. I want to end today's program with this message. The great news is that working to heal your ego energy using ego medicine and by growing your awareness of its symptoms, ego stupidity, insights, and spiritual impact will allow the divine truth in your being to flow and to shine through you and allow you to fully embrace each of the divine gifts. The spiritual part of healing is a given. It's a given. It's part of your endowment. Divine truth and divine gifts are part of your spiritual being. They're part of your heritage. And that heritage already exists within you. You need do nothing more to be spiritual. You already are. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. You only need to enhance your humanity with ego medicine so that all which is available to you is given. Fix your ego to fix your life, humanly and spiritually. I want to thank you for listening and allowing me to be your servant. I want you to have a great week, and please come back to my next program. In peace and love, this is Dr. Nick saying goodbye for now.